So I'm delighted to be joined today by John Ulsh, who isn't local. It's very early there. It's lunchtime here. It's early where you are, John. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you today?
Well, I've only been up for an hour, so I haven't had enough time to make it get worse or
Oh,
better.
well,
This might be the highlight of my day. I hope.
I hope. Hopefully, things will only get better. And I really appreciate you giving me your time to join me today for this conversation all about you and your book because you're not local to Marlow. Tell us where you are based.
I am based in central Pennsylvania, so Harrisburg is the state capital of Pennsylvania. I live in that area, so
Wow. Well,
across the pond.
I feel really privileged that we're having this conversation because being on the radio has really given me a great love of conversations with all people and anyone that's got to share something of real value. And when we met and had our initial conversation, I loved what you had to share. And I think it's just really powerful, which has led you to writing your book, The Upside of Down, which is widely available. No one can see me holding it up here, but I'm privileged that you sent me a copy. But we'll talk more about that in a minute. But tell me a bit about you, because I imagine when you started off in life, you didn't think, I'm going to publish a book and become in the position you're in now. So what did life look like for you, John, initially? What was your aspirations and dreams when you stepped out of school?
So when I first came out of college, I worked in banking, of all things. And then I went to work for my wife's family at the time, so in the jewelry industry. And then what'll be almost 18 years ago, we were in a head-on car crash, which is sort of what the book is about. My wife at the time, my 8-year-old daughter, and my 4-year-old son were all in the car. We had just left a swim meet. It was a Saturday at afternoon, like noontime, and we were just driving back home and to go get a Christmas tree. And a car coming the other direction crossed the center line of an undivided road. So it was a 55-mile road, and the police estimated the impact speed to be 125 miles an hour. So other car was doing 70, we were doing 55, and we went driver to driver. And that other driver passed away at the scene, and that started what was a really, really long journey for me. I was given less than a 3% chance to survive that accident. I spent 18 days in a coma. When I came out of a coma, I was paralyzed from the waist down, and I had a lot of internal injuries that would have killed me: ruptured spleen and diaphragm, lungs collapsed. But the orthopedic, my pelvis was shattered, my back was broken in 4 places, my left leg was shattered, and I was going to be non-weight bearing for 10 more weeks. So even when I left the hospital, I had to go live in a nursing home, which I don't, does that word have the same, an elderly home?
Yeah, that's the same for us here.
Yeah. That's going to be the fun part. We're going to have some words that your listeners will be like, what is he talking about?
Yeah.
And my chat GPT gave me all the good British words I need to know. And then the rest I got from Harry Potter and Benny Hill. Oh,
Yeah, you can't really go
so
wrong with that. Harry Potter is wildly watched and known over here, John. So if there are any words, we can muddle through between us.
yeah,
But
yeah. So like I said, my kids are 8 and 4 when this accident happened 18 years ago. So they were raised on Harry Potter. So that will be our.
yeah, I mean, can I just interject there? I mean, firstly, what an opening to our conversation. I mean, that is a really, it feels quite prominent as well because we are approaching Christmas time. We're reaching that month before Christmas, and this must feel, I know it's always going to be something that's with you, that experience and the effects that would have had on you, but just the impact of what that's had on your life and just the title of your book. I haven't actually read it yet because it only arrived a few days ago, but I'm really looking forward to it. But The Upside of Down, I can only imagine what that must have felt like for you following what you've just shared. And now look at you, you're sharing this story, you've written a book. It's not easy to write a book. I mean, we've both shared our love of publishing a book, and I know it's not, it is not easy. So you were in your job in banking, you had 2 young children. This accident just turned your world upside down, essentially.
Yes.
and you had to go into a nursing home. Now that must have felt, well, tell me how that felt.
So, so on top of that, so the anniversary is December 1st. So we're literally coming up on 18 years. I moved into the nursing home 2 days before Christmas, paralyzed, unable to be lifted up on a bed, unable to feed myself, take care of myself at all. I had full nursing care the whole time. And I had been on, I mean, a lot of pain medication, but in the hospital through IV, and now I'm taking oral pills. And so, yeah, I spent that Christmas morning waking up after maybe 2 hours of sleep, because that's all I ever could handle with the amount of pain I was in, just realizing that, I'm in a nursing home. I'm 36 years old, and I am paralyzed, and my life was gone. As far as I was concerned, it was over. It was never going, my goal was to get my life back to what it was. And at some point in that nursing home over those 10 weeks, I realized that, one, I was never going to get my old life back. Like, I could wish for it all I wanted, but my life was forever changed. And there was nothing that I could do about it other than, continue to try to push to get whatever part of it back that I could. And that, I was at that point, at that time, I was completely paralyzed from on my left leg, couldn't use it at all, was starting to be able to use my right leg a little bit. And I kept thinking, I'm going to be in a wheelchair the rest of my life.
I
And
mean,
so, yeah, that holiday was powerful, because it was just, a lot of me coming to terms, because, I was in a coma for 18 days. So when I came out of the coma, I wasn't only out of the coma for, a little over a week before they moved me to a nursing home.
that's just, I mean, a transformational experience, isn't it? Good or bad, we have these experiences and they shape us and change our lives. I mean, did you at this point, when you come round from this coma, like your wife and your children, like where were they? Were they okay? Were they?
Yeah, so my son, the 4-year-old, was the second most injured. He was actually sitting behind me in a kid's booster's car seat, and my chair had come back from my car into his left leg and snapped his fibula and tibia in his left leg, and then the lap belt severed his small intestine without actually cutting his skin. So he spent like 14 days in the hospital. My wife had spent about 5 days in the hospital, and then my daughter was the only one. Actually, she was the only one who was conscious when the first people came to the scene of the car accident. They actually found my daughter crawling between the front seats, crying, "Daddy, don't die."
Wow.
She was an 8-year-old little girl, wide awake. She was, and everyone else in the car was unconscious. So yeah, when I came out of the coma, my family was all back home by then. I knew they were all alive. I didn't understand the extent of their injuries yet, nor mine for that matter. I was probably out of a coma for 2 days before I even realized I was paralyzed from the waist down, because they had me hooked up to so much stuff, and I was in so much pain, and just starting to come conscious enough to understand even where I was, to even understand the severity of the whole thing. So
I can't imagine it, but I can only sense that through what you shared that it's really, really taken you on this journey into a new life, one way or the other. That would have changed you all, wouldn't it?
yeah,
Especially for yourself, where you've been in that position and had to just experience things you never thought, at the age of 36, that you'd be in a like an old people's home, having to almost fight for your life and not knowing what was next.
yeah. So what's also, you know, a little bit overwhelming about my journey is, so I've had 45 surgeries related to the car accident. So I haven't, this will be the first year, unless something happens in the next few days, that I've gone a whole year without a surgery in 18 years. So for 17 years in a row, I've had at least one surgery every single year. Um, what's what's interesting is, so the first, 18 surgeries were literally to put me back together, to fix me. The
Mm.
last surgeries that I've had have all been direct relationship to the fact I survived. I'd go in for a surgery or have this complication, and my doctors would be like, "This is a complication that most people don't deal with, because most people don't survive. So you're dealing with, vein issues now, and you're dealing with muscle issues and you're dealing with skeletal issues that are directly correlated to the car accident, but you're only going through it because you didn't die. I mean, you should have died that day. And now you're dealing with the fact that you survived and that so I can't be really upset about the fact that I keep going in for surgeries because, I only have these surgeries going on because of the fact I'm still on this earth. So
I mean, that's amazing. It's a gift in itself, isn't it? I mean, you're
it
obviously
is.
meant to be here to share this story with others and give people just hope and, that faith in, we can go through really difficult times, but you're able to come through that and learn from it. And it's led you to writing this book, to us meeting and all these things. So can I ask you, I do want to come on to the book and the power behind that. But firstly, when you were in that difficult space, what was it that got you through? Did you write then? Did you start writing your experience? Like what helped you move through the suffering?
So a combination of probably two things. So yes, I probably within the first year, I started journaling just as part of me dealing with my emotions of it all. I mean, I struggled with having my life just flipped upside down, right? In an instant, literally. So it's just one of those things where, I talk to people all the time who have had really life-changing situations, and we're trying to always help them basically turning these setbacks into fuel to propel them forward is what I would love to focus on. But for me, a lot of it was just this idea that one, my kids were 8 and 4. Um, I had somebody tell me that, I was struggling with why I survived, and somebody said, maybe you just survived so your kids have a father. And so of all the things that people told me, if somebody said you survived to write a book, I would have told them they were crazy. But the fact that they could say, oh, well, maybe you're just here so your kids have a dad, I could wrap my head around.
Mm.
Uh, so one of the big motivators for me because I was in a wheelchair. So I was in a wheelchair for a while. And so this idea that my kids were going to push me in a wheelchair was hard for me to take. I was a marathon runner before the car accident happened. So, I ran track and field at university. So, I had a career of being athletic and being in really good shape. And it actually saved my life because my left lung had completely collapsed and my right lung had partially collapsed at the accident. So I survived on half a lung, but I had strong lungs. I just run 12 miles that morning and I was low body fat. So when they had to cut me open, there wasn't I didn't have this visceral fat that they had to work around, which both played a big role in me surviving. But my motivation was a combination of one, to this day, I understand now that I find a lot of self-worth in being valuable to other people. Like that is sort of my identity. Um, I'm terrible at a compliment. I can't take them well. And I hate let people pick up the tab. So I've learned this through therapy that this is sort of, I identify myself as being valuable as a human being when I'm valuable to other people, which both healthy and unhealthy. But now all of a sudden I can realize back to the accident that the worst thing for somebody who's like that is to be paralyzed in a bed because
Yeah.
I'm useful to no one. So it became my only value at that point was going to be, look at me getting better. Look at me working hard for you guys so that, you won't be disappointed that your dad can't get out of a bed. And you will, as a husband, you won't be this disappointment who can't take care of, taking the trash can out. And so it was a strong motivator for me for a really long time to just not become a burden to my family and friends who were constantly there for me right now, spending time with me, sitting with me in the nursing home, sitting with me in rehab, in some case driving my car to the rehabilitation when I leave and I have to go to like outpatient rehab where I have to go there every day. Like I couldn't drive a car. So, I counted on so many people, which, for someone like me was like the worst thing in the world to be a burden to someone else when all you want to be is somebody who helps everyone else.
But how inspiring though, you sharing what you shared there, A, about how you got through that difficult time, writing to connect with the emotions, but the actual physical drive for you to want to keep going was so that you could connect back to that space, so that you could be of value to someone else, like that in service. And I relate to a lot of what you said, as a person, and how it's difficult to take compliments and things like that. But through that space where you've been able to be present with yourself and connect to that drive, it's led you to this. I mean, I can't speak for you, but virtually full recovery. You're probably still having challenges and things that you can't do now, but you're moving around, you're able to walk, you're writing books, you're connecting with people, and you're of huge value to others. So that's amazing, isn't it? From laying in that bed where you couldn't sit up to now be this and be present with your children and be there for them. I mean, what an inspiration.
Yeah, and again, it's been a long journey. The first couple of years were harder. So, I mentioned going to rehabilitation. So when I left the nursing home, I finally got to go to like an inpatient rehab facility for just to start to learn to use either a wheelchair or eventually to a walker. And when I left there, it was just to come to my home, which the house I lived in had stairs to get to the bedroom. So until I could learn, I couldn't live on the first floor of my house. So until I could learn to get up some stairs, there was no way I could even live in my house. So that became my goal. But about 2 years after the accident, I had a bunch more major surgeries that would put me in the hospital for like 2 weeks at a time for recovery. And I just, my daughter's now 10, and she's a big soccer / football. Again, we can go with the language here, but she was a huge soccer fan and player. She loved it, and she was a very good soccer player as a teen as well. And so I'm sitting in my home office. I can now walk with a walker. I could use a set of crutches around my house to get up the stairs, but still not fully recovered to the level you see. And she's out there juggling a soccer ball, and all of a sudden I look up and she's not there, and I hear the front door open, and she comes in and she's crying, and I ask her what's wrong, and she comes over to me and she says, "I miss my old daddy, the one who would play soccer with me in the yard." And that hurt me more than probably anything I'd been through at that point. And the next day, I go to my outpatient rehab and I quit. And I said, "You guys won't push me as hard as I know I can push myself." Again, being a college athlete in a university and being a marathon runner as in my 30s, I was like, I know what it's like to push hard. And so I literally drove, because I could drive a car at that point, from rehab down the street to our local YMCA, and started at 10 o'clock in the morning, coincidentally working out with young adults with Down syndrome. And for the next year, 3 days a week, I would be in the gym working out with special needs teens. They became my motivator, and they really helped me to. I mean, first of all, if you've spent any time with them, they're the most positive human beings on the face of the earth. They're extremely non-judgmental and very loving people. So like it was the right environment at the right time for me to be in, and I just happened to fall into it. I hadn't set out to end up with them. It just turned out that first day I walked in was the day they were there. And they came every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with their own trainers. And I'm like, I'm comfortable here. I wasn't comfortable around my own peers because I was in really bad shape. And, walking in a walker around the gym was embarrassing.
It
And
just
so, yeah.
Sorry, John. It just goes to show, doesn't it, that being surrounded by love and positivity and in the right environment, that anything is really achievable, which I am imagining led you to come strength to strength. And I really want to understand, like, what led you, because I want to come on to your book, what led you to the writing of your book? Because you obviously enjoyed journaling. This story is hugely important, and you've shared that now. But tell me about how The Upside of Down, gained form and became a book for you to share. How did that begin?
it was a long journey. I think when you and I talked before, I wrote that. So my book's two parts, part one and part two. Part one of the book is pretty much more a biography or of what happened. And I wrote that 14 years ago. At the time, I had a pretty good speaking opportunity. I'd been in so part of the reason that magazines and news and everyone wanted to pick me up was because one, it was a feel good story. Our whole family survived an accident. It happened at the holidays, right? And then when I started working out at the YMCA with United Cerebral Palsy's programs for these special needs kids, all those things resonated with the community, right? First, you're using your local YMCA. Now you're working out with teens with Down syndrome. And so newspapers and magazines back then started picking it up. And then one day I get a reach out from People magazine, which here in the States was at the time was a really big magazine. They wrote a little piece about me. And then I ended up in Men's Fitness magazine, which is at the time a big fitness magazine here in the States. And they wrote a 5-page feature about my recovery. And all those things led to like, oh, we want you to come speak at this organization. Oh, we need you to. And it was the recession. It was, at the same time, 15, 16. And so that all these companies, both nonprofits and corporations, needed somebody to tell them everything's like not as bad as it looks. Or you could be, I always said they would bring me in to speak because at the end of a 2-day conference, I would speak at breakfast and they'd heard nothing but bad news. And then they were like, all right, well, this guy's going to make us all feel better because we could have been him. Because what's unique is anybody with children has done exactly what we were doing, right? It was a swim meet, but it could have been a soccer match. It could have been ballet practice. It could have been theater practice. Like name anybody who has kids and you've done this. You're just shuttling kids to matches or practice. Right? Yeah, exactly. I know you do. So again, it's not unique. I always say, we're not first responders. I'm not military. I always say I'm not motocross racer. Like I wasn't doing anything particularly, dangerous, and this happened. And so I wrote that book at that time, the first part of it, and for a number of reasons, I one of them being one of my best friends committed suicide, and it just shook me. And I said, I can't, like the person who held my hand literally for a year, to do that was again, I understand a lot more now about mental health than I did at the time, but at the time it just shook me, and I pulled my contract with my publisher and literally sat on it for 14 years. And last fall, about this time, I started rethinking, all right, what are the lessons that I'm really learning right now? Like I'd done all these things, but I never gave them a name. So I think when you went through the writing process, like all of a sudden you're like, these are concepts and ideas that I use or live through every day to recover, but I never gave them a name. I never put them into context. So the second part of my book is really about 8 pillars that actually turn setbacks into success, and literally a step-by-step process to do it, referring back to, times in my journey where they became important to me. But in January of this year, I wrote 22,000 more words in 7 days.
That's amazing,
So
John. And another thing, you said how important it is that you're giving back to people. You feel you've got a purposeful life when you're giving something back. So essentially, you've used your experience, you've shared that in the first half, and now you're stepping into that, what got you through this whole time, combined with the writing to bring together this book. So it's just lovely, isn't it? It's just, I know you've had a really difficult time to get here and suffered some challenges, but what you've produced out of that and what you're now sharing, and even bringing us to this point to be connected, to have this conversation and share this time, is really lovely, because I think it gives people hope. And especially, coming up to Christmas time and things like that, people, suffer a lot around that time, and it's really important. So I'm just really grateful for you sharing it with us here.
yeah, I don't think it's a coincidence that, it was December, because it is at the end, it's a positive story, right? Lots of setbacks, lots of challenges, but now I have, a 22 and 26-year-old kids that
Mm.
are, generally adults. They've gotten through all this. My journey has been, I still constantly am learning about myself and the consequences of this happening, and just even understanding who I am that drives me to do this. It's why I love to do interviews, because interviews are much more useful for me than, say, be a keynote speaker. If I'm a keynote speaker, I'm controlling the dialogue for an hour, right?
Mm.
Standing on a stage and talking. When we do things like this, now we're learning from each other. We're
Yeah.
we're sharing our combined knowledges of our experiences. And I mean, your book is, I'm about halfway through your book. I promised you I'd only read it on a beach, so I'm going back to a beach today just so I can get it done. That's my excuse for keep going to beaches, so I could finish your book. But I mean, I'm enjoying it a lot because, again, you and I have now talked like over Zoom before. I now know more of your story. Now I'm reading it and I'm putting it into context and taking things from it that I can use. And so it's become this has become a great educational learning experience for me about myself.
Yeah, and me too. Thanks, John. I'm really grateful of this time. And I think when you're sharing experiences like this and having conversations, we are learning. And I imagine you have that privilege as well with your children because they were so young and now they're in their 20s. And do you regularly have that interaction and communication with them about, how their lives feel impacted by different things? And they must be amazing human beings as well. And just to
They
keep
are they
learning
are
together.
amazing
Yeah.
human beings. Yeah, like for them being so young when it happened, particularly my son, he's in his final year at university. Um, he's really not known a life. You have children like 1 to 4, they have memories, but you know, it's not as fine tuned as your earlier years in your teens, right? And so
Mm.
he's never really known much of a life that didn't have me having surgeries all the time, or having setbacks, or having these challenges. And so I think one, it kind of forced them to grow up pretty quick, to process those types of things. Secondly, they are driven because I mean, their mother's a driven human being, very successful business owner. Their father has been, writes books about being driven. So they've seen it firsthand,
Mm.
and we don't necessarily push them harder, but they just see that that's the way to get things, right? To be successful, you don't wait for something to just be given to you. If I just waited, I'd still be in a wheelchair. It's one of those things where lead by example, of what it is to push through, a challenge, or both physical or mental challenge, and keep pushing forward. So I think for
Yeah.
them to kind of see the book as sort of, when I first wrote those first 30,000 words, they were just for them at that point. I mean, when I took my publishing deal back, I gave it to an English literary professor at a university and said, just make it better, make it flow properly, use the right grammar, because I'm not an English major, and I just set it aside to one day when I thought I'd give it to them. At that point, after that publishing deal went away, I was like, I'm not going to publish this. I'm just going to give it to my kids someday as basically a diary of what my life was like.
That's what I wanted to do with mine, funnily enough. I thought the experiences I just wanted to have written down so they could understand how I felt in the times they had to watch me be, extremely anxious or fearful. So, what a gift that you've given back here. I mean, I'm so inspired by having this conversation and just how just going forward this is all unraveling for you, John. It's so exciting. Can you tell me where can people get your book. So if anybody is listening to our conversation right now and they want to get in touch with you, or they'd like to read your amazing book, which I'm going to read, and it's going to be more special now because we've had this conversation, I can really understand from you how it feels. But where can we find all about you, John?
So you can find all about me at johnulsh.com. So JOHNULSH.com. The same handle for Instagram and TikTok, LinkedIn. But and then from the book ordering, it's available at all the online ordering. You and I were having a little conversation. It's a little it's interesting. I could get a book to you through Amazon faster than you could get a book to yourself, which is crazy because I got a book. I ordered a book here in the States for you through Amazon, and I could get it to you within, I think, 3 days, 4 days. So I'm going to talk to my publisher and tell them, look, we have to make sure our distribution over in the UK is a little stronger right now. But yeah, or go to johnulsh.com. You can place an order there. We'll figure it out. We've been able to get books into people's hands, and then you could just have me come over to London, and I can hang out, and we can do book signings together.
You're welcome. Only if you return the favor and have me fly out there.
Absolutely.
There we go. That'll be a part 2. But John, thank you so much for giving me your time, sharing your story and inspiration. And it really, truly does give hope. And just that if you put your mind to something and you're surrounded with the right people, you truly can, really connect with anything. So give us a lasting message to leave the people that are listening with, to take us into the rest of their day.
Okay. Well, so people ask me a lot, how I got through this journey. And I think the most valuable thing I can tell you is do not fall in love with the finish line, or do not fall in love with this goal. If you're only ever passionate about reaching something, you're missing actually the most beautiful part, which is the process. And if you can fall in love with the process of anything, whether it's work related, health related, relationship related, you will have all the things that you want, because the real beauty is in the process, not in the goal or the finish. I always say athletes who hate practice never become elite athletes. Like, there's no elite athlete in any sport who doesn't love practice, right? And so, if you can't fall in love with the process, you're probably not doing something you love.
That is so true. I love that. When I finish talking to you and I do a little post about this, I'm going to head it, do not fall in love with the finish line, because that is so inspiring, and we have to enjoy the moments. I mean, with all the mindfulness and everything that I'm doing outside of radio and other things, that's what it's all about. It's being in the moment and finding the joy and the pleasure in like this, in the conversation, in the learning. So thank you, John. We will do a part 2 if you'll come back. And I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Thank you for being with me.
Thank you. Appreciate you, Kelly.